Now, I just want to, before getting on to the panelists, I just want to give you a bit of background about myself. Before taking over as board president earlier this year, I have served on the MADS board for about 1.5 years, and before that, I have been involved with MADS for about 4 years now. So that's no coincidence there that started about the time when we received a diagnosis, a Down syndrome diagnosis for our son, Chase. I'm obviously a little biased, but I think Chase is just a wonderful, happy little boy who seems to just, bring joy to the entire world around him. There's certainly been challenges being a parent to a child with Down syndrome, but he's really brought just a ton of joy to our family and has really given me new perspectives on a lot of things in life. And so, he's my connection to Down syndrome and the reason I'm here today. And now let's turn it over to the folks you really want to hear from and get some of their perspectives. So I am happy to welcome each of the panelists here to our virtual stage. If you guys all want to turn on your cameras and then I will go through my list here, and then if each one of you want to just give your name, your connection to MADS, and if there's anything else you want to share about yourself. All right. So first we have Erin. Would you like to say hello?
Sure. My name is Mckenna. I'm the mother of a 6-year-old with Down syndrome. He was born in Illinois, and we moved to California when he was 3. So my connection to Matt, I grew up in Wisconsin, so that's how I'm connected to the GG's Playhouse in Madison. Just a couple other little things that are kind of relevant to my experience in raising a child with Down syndrome. First of all, we are a bilingual Spanish-English family, and so that's been one interesting part of our journey. I also have self-published a picture book inspired by my son called Laughter is My Language that, is talking about how he is able to communicate despite not having the typical way of communicating through speech. And also because of my journey with him, I'm preparing to publish a storybook series to support sign language and language acquisition in general called Sign Along Stories.
Great, thank you. Amy, would you like to go next?
Sure. Sorry, I'm not able to share my video or turn my video on. So anyhow, oh wait, now I can. I was blocked. Hi, I'm Amy Ulrich, and I am a sibling of an individual with Down syndrome. My brother is Christopher, and he is turning 44 this year, and he lives with me, and I'm his primary caregiver and guardian after our parents passed away. And we live in Madison.
All right, thank you. Tiffany.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Glass. This is Max. Max is 10 years old. He has a dual diagnosis of Down syndrome and autism. And he communicates using electronic AAC. And then also we live in Madison. And I work at UW-Madison as a research scientist. And one of the things I study is Down syndrome, and we've worked with mouse models of Down syndrome. So in our family, we wear a lot of different hats. And we've also really enjoyed and benefited a lot from the GG's Playhouse programs, especially their pilot program for families with the dual diagnosis of Down syndrome and autism.
Great, thank you. Virginia.
Hi, my name is Virginia Mckenna, And I'm the single parent of 3 children. I have a son, Henry, who's 13, and then my 2 girls, Annie, who is 10, and Charlie, who is 6. And my 2 girls came to us through adoption. So I adopted Charlie 3 years ago from China, and then Annie a year and a half ago from Colombia. And so I had an aunt who had Down syndrome. So when I was looking at expanding my family, I knew the joys that came with people with Down syndrome. So I decided that was a good way to expand our family and our connection. We live in Madison and have been fortunate enough to spend quite a bit of time with Gigi's and with their programs. So that's me. Do you want to come say hi? This is Annie. My girls might be in and out. Just wanted to say hi. Hi. Oh, Charlie, you want to say hi too? So. And this is Charlie. Can you say hi? Hi. Hi.
All right, thank you so much. Next, we have Susan. Susan, I think you're there, but I think you're muted. The joys of virtual meeting. Why don't let's go to Jen and maybe we'll try and come back to Susan.
I guess I'm ready.
Yeah, tell us about yourself.
I am an adult with mosaic Down syndrome. And first of all, I'm thrilled to be on here. And I live up in Montello, in Marquette County in Wisconsin. And oh, what to tell about me? I'm pretty amazing. Anyone who knows me well knows that I'm pretty darn amazing with.
Just turn down the volume and bring it with you.
Yeah. Whoever's just spoke, I don't know who, but yeah, I'm pretty smart. I live on my own. I take care of my cat. And so, well, now you have me.
Great. Thanks for being here, Jen. Susan, I see you now. And
yeah, I realize I can't do it on my iPad. I have to do it on the computer. So can you hear me now and
yes.
see me?
Yep,
Oh,
we
great.
can. So yeah.
So I am a grandmother of a 4-year-old, Jacob, who is an amazing little kiddo. We've just recently become full-time caregivers. And with that come the challenges of with the challenges of COVID and with the challenges of school not being in place and limited outing opportunities. We've been trying to be very creative with our interactions with Jacob and our other 2 grandsons. But miss Gigi's a lot.
Yes, we all do. All right, great. So I think that's everybody. Thank you, to all the panelists here so much for being here and dedicating your time. We really look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. So with that, I have a whole list of questions for you guys. We are already close to our 10:30 mark. So I'll just go ahead and say, for anybody out there in the audience who has other commitments, by all means, we understand. But we are going to try and get through most of these questions just because, there's I think a lot of great things that we have in store from our panelists. So I'm going to jump right in. I will go through my list and direct different questions to different people. By all means, in the panelists here, if anybody's just itching to say something, by all means, jump in and join the conversation. I think everybody here is here to hear you guys. So with that, the first question I have, I will ask it to Erin and Tiffany. So how did you find out that your child has Down syndrome? And maybe Erin, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. I found out when he was born at the hospital, maybe a half hour after he was born. The midwife came in and told me that she was suspecting that. So that was pretty conclusive for us.
Okay. And do you want to give us just the real quick, your reaction as much as you want to share or as little.
Sure. I mean, I can give more information. I had a quad screen that came up with like an elevated possibility. So it wasn't like it was completely out of the blue. That happened, about halfway through the pregnancy. And so I remember going at that point, struggling with, what the reality would be. And one thing that really helped me was looking at people who had children with Down syndrome writing to themselves when they were worried about these things, and reading how all of my concerns and fears were kind of, based on that naive moment where you don't really know what to expect for the future. And so when I was reading what other parents had to say, it made me feel like, well, no matter what happens, I will be fine. And so so then when the reality was that he did have Down syndrome when he was born, that's when we found out. Just, working through it and using some of the materials that I found that other parents had written was definitely the most important thing that helped me get through. And maybe also just realizing the opportunities that my son would provide to me, including things like advocacy, which I felt like I always really wanted to be involved in, and didn't necessarily know where to channel it. And then now I have somebody who he's inspired me in the ways that I can and use that I want to, my drive to advocate and to put things into the world to make it better for everybody. I know exactly which group of people that I want to be advocating for.
Great. And Tiffany?
Oh yeah, I think for us it was similar. We had a postnatal diagnosis of Down syndrome. And then we had a diagnosis of autism at around 3 years of age. And leading up to that, we'd had some really amazing birth to 3 workers who were noticing during our birth to 3 services that things were a little unique. And so during we had a routine screening right before 3 years of age that raised some flags for autism. So that's how our diagnoses came about.
Okay. Yeah, and for myself personally, like I think I mentioned, we did find out prenatally, so there was no shock for us. We had plenty of time to kind of come to terms and kind of learn a lot about it. So let's move on. Let's go to Tiffany. I want to ask, what has been your experience with inclusion?
Oh, this is my favorite thing to talk about. We've had terrible experiences with inclusion. I think so. Max was actually born in Minnesota, and after he was born, after he had a open heart surgery, I needed to go back to work, and we started looking into daycares. And we had arranged a spot for him in an amazing daycare, the type of daycare that has a very long waiting list that people sign themselves onto as soon as they're pregnant. And so the daycare let us know they were ready for him. And right before we sent him for his first day, we said, by the way, we have a diagnosis of Down syndrome, just so you know, so we'll need some accommodations. And then we were told he couldn't attend at that time, that they needed more time. And that was our introduction to the world of inclusion. Whereas I think if we had had a child without disabilities, I think he would have attended one daycare before beginning public school. But in our case, because Max had disabilities, he ended up attending 3 different daycares just because of complexities involved in inclusion and making inclusion work for children with disabilities. And that pattern kind of followed us through the years. So we moved to Madison when Max was around 3.5 or 4, and continued to encounter so many challenges with inclusion. So now he's 10 years old, and he's been bounced around to maybe 5 different elementary schools. He's a 5th grader who's been in 5 different schools. It's a little more complicated than that. So maybe it's been 6 schools. I'm starting to lose track. Reason being, when we enroll in a school and attempt to make inclusion work, our efforts at inclusion cause such a commotion. There turn out to be so many complicated barriers, like very, very complicated barriers. It's not that we're not welcome, it's that the logistics involved in inclusion for children with multiple disabilities who require many different types of accommodations, it's so complicated that it causes situations that force us to leave the school. And so I think our experience might be pretty different from the experience of many families with Down syndrome. I think because we do have that additional diagnosis of autism, I think that brings some support needs that are a little more difficult to implement. And I think the other big piece is because we do have complex communication needs and we need accommodations for electronic AAC. I think those 3 pieces, the Down syndrome, the autism, and the electronic AAC, have turned out to be just very, very challenging in terms of making inclusion work. So I'm very excited about our community's commitment to inclusion. And I think if I just had to boil my comments down to a soundbite, it's that the logistical barriers involved in making inclusion work well and safely for some of our community members, I think, are far greater than a lot of us appreciate. And so I think we have a lot of work to do to make the world a better place for some of our community members.
Well, thank you very much for sharing. That sounds like it's been tough, to be honest. So I commend you for overcoming a lot of that. Amy, I'd like to pose the same question to you as it relates to your brother, Chris. So what has been your experience with inclusion for Chris throughout his life, at least that you're able to share?
I don't know a lot about his inclusion, when he was growing up. I mean, obviously it was a different time frame for him. He went to West High School and Van Hise Middle School. And I think at that time, it was more like functional type of classroom settings where he was learning like independent living skills. So how to use a washer and dryer, how to cook meals and that kind of thing. Inclusion is always hard. And, it was hard as a sibling to have him running around West High School when I was at West High School as a teenager. And so, I was, dealing with that, that having a sibling with a disability when you're growing up is well, it's hard growing up, period. But then when you have a sibling with a disability, it's even a little more challenging. So, but he transitioned out of high school and he has worked at the Great Dane since he was 18. He's the longest employee actually at the Great Dane pub downtown, he will tell you, and is very proud of that. And he's, incredibly popular and people love him. But we definitely, we have problems with inclusion for sure. And it requires constant advocacy, and it does get tiring. It just really gets tiring to sometimes I feel like I'm constantly fighting. I'm constantly on the defense. I'm constantly waiting for that, he can't be here moment. We had a moment like that at our church quite frankly, where he was kicked out of a church program that I had signed him up for. And it, that was really like, I didn't see that one coming. And when you have a moment of inclusion where you get like hit over the head, it really knocks you kind of sideways for a second, and it makes you look at the world a little differently and the people who you think you trust a little differently. So I think, as parents and siblings and grandparents, we're always just advocating and fighting, and it can be tiring for sure. But Madison is a great community, but I definitely can see some of the challenges that come with integration and inclusion.
Yeah, thank you. It takes a village. All right, next question. I'm going to send one over to Jen. So what do you like to do outside of the house? I believe I saw in the chat you recently broke your ankle, so that obviously is going to limit you. Plus with COVID, it's hard to do too much, but maybe it's, what are you most looking forward to doing when you're able to outside?
I'm glad you asked about that. Like I said, since last year, it's been quite rough on me. And then because I have hardware in my ankle, I am getting that out in May. And so from now until the moment I get the hardware out, I'm going to be out, do the best I can. I am a lifetime ambassador for Nothing Down, and they're located in New Jersey. And since World Down Syndrome Day last year, that was when I became a lifetime ambassador. And so I'm like, great, COVID's here. Now what? How am I supposed to go out and do what I want to do? Well, everything was on standby. So I'm like, all right, it's okay. I could find other ways. So I would start off with donations for like NDSS, because I was on the Jumbotron for NDSS last year in September. And just taking parts of things in my area that is not Down syndrome related, but I made it Down syndrome related because I would go out and wear my Nothing Down ambassador sash that was made for me. And so I wear it with great pride whenever I go out. And now we have something called Fish and Fun up here in Montello towards the end of April. And what am I going to be doing? I'm going to be proudly representing Nothing Down, as well as just being the popular person that I am. Everyone loves me, and everyone's always excited to see what I'm doing next. So I love my community outreach that I have with among my friends in general.
Yeah, that's great. We love to see all your involvement. That's really awesome.
Thank you.
So Virginia, how do you respond to challenging behavior?
That's a good question. It happens on a regular. So I think the main thing, my girls are just like any other children in terms of needing consistency. Certainly we had a few extra challenges because of the fact that they were adopted and had some, previous trauma, and had some other traumas and things, from prior to coming. So, I mean, I think the main thing with them is, having a loving environment at home, but also not letting them get away with bad behaviors. They know what the rules are. They know when they're doing something wrong, and I think the consistency is kind of the big thing that we do at our house, just because they're smart. They'll try to get away with things. And sometimes other people, I think, say, kind of make excuses for the behavior. But I think we try to, just, they know what's right, they know what's wrong. And if they don't, we kind of address it and go from there.
Yeah, I could use some tips from you, so maybe I'll talk to you later. For us, it's peaceful protests.
It's amazing because as we can see here today, there is a huge range with children with Down syndrome, a huge range of abilities and different things. But I think, I don't know about the rest of you, but I think they all tend to be a little bit stubborn. They have so many good qualities, but Jen's, are you agreeing, Jen?
I'm very stubborn.
There's something about, I mean, they dig their heels in, but very sweet, but stubborn. So.
All right, great, thank you. Let's ask this next question to Erin. What is one thing you would like to tell teachers and or schools?
Yeah, so I think, you know, and it was really interesting to hear Tiffany's experience with inclusion, because I have also been seeking that out for my son, and even kind of like moving based on where I know that I'm not going to have to fight that big of a battle in order to get that. But even when you are in an inclusive, so-called inclusive environment, one thing that I just really would want to tell the teachers is that they are the ones that set the tone of inclusion in the classroom. And so it's not just that the child is there in the classroom, but really just every moment that the teacher has in the classroom, and the way that they approach this, what I would call an opportunity, really, no matter what they're thinking, is about having a child that might learn a little bit differently in the classroom. It really is an opportunity, not just because you'll get to see amazing achievements that are just so incredible, but also because it allows for this interesting collaboration when you want to do it right with parents who a lot of times are really dedicated. And so that, I think, I mean, as a parent, I know that it's an opportunity for me to be working with my son. And so I think teachers similarly have this opportunity to work, but that throughout that, they have to have that mentality. They have to have the mentality that this is an exciting opportunity, and they're going to set that tone for all the other kids in the class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's spot on. Thank you.
Can I add
Yeah,
something to
yeah,
that?
of course.
I totally agree. I think that was well said. And the fact that teachers can use this as an opportunity for other children in their classes. Think about the learning benefit that they get helping someone else who's not at the same level that they're at. And you think about, I mean, they'll grow up having this experience of having a wonderful experience with someone, helping someone who maybe struggles a little bit more than they do, but also can teach them a thing or two about empathy and love. So I think not only a collaboration with the teachers and parents, but also, you know, involving the children to be kind and loving and to learn something from the student who has disabilities in their classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I
Jen,
want to add
go ahead.
something that Virginia said about empathy. I am so big on empathy and compassion that I feel that most people do not understand us whatsoever when it comes to expressing our needs. And it's like they hear us, but are they really hearing us? So thank you for bringing that up, Virginia. That's great to know.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thank you. Next question, let's go back to Tiffany. What is one thing you would like to share with other parents? And then I also want to ask that same question to Susan from the perspective of a grandmother to other grandparents.
Yeah, there are, I mean,
I'm sure there's lots of things.
So many things to share. You know, I think over the years for our family, and I think every family has a unique experience, and so our experience isn't necessarily representative. But for us, if we have to pick just one big idea that we have found to be the most helpful, has been really the focus on figuring out accommodations for communication disabilities. So I was super, super excited to see the presentations earlier today about language and communication development for children with Down syndrome. I was excited to see AAC in the presentations. I was so excited to see information about hearing loss and hearing in children with Down syndrome. And I think since our son can't speak, for our son, his only access to expressive communication using language is through his electronic AAC. And his ability to communicate is really his gateway to accessing all of the medical support he needs. His ability to communicate is how he accesses all these avenues of self-determination. And for our family, the ability to communicate is really fundamental to supporting the needs that we might have in all domains. Like behavior is communication. If we're having a medical problem, we need to be able to communicate in order to get it diagnosed and in order to manage the treatment. When we think about whether he would like to participate in research, he needs to be able to communicate to give informed consent. So in a lot of ways, yeah, just, you know, one tiny thought I'd love to share with other families is, to the extent possible, and I know our resources are so limited, but would be to use what resources we have to really prioritize figuring out what the accommodations are needed for communication and making those available to the fullest extent possible.
All right, Susan.
I think communication is the key. For us, it's the most exciting component to see the progress that Jacob's made over the last 6 months. And it's also the most frustrating component when we are unable to understand what he's wanting from us. So I think communication, and we've had the opportunity to work really hard on communication with him and learn both his vocabulary and his if it's pronunciation or enunciation of the words and how that bears on his communication. I think, yeah, communication's been, like I said, the most rewarding, to see him be able to tell us what he wants and to have the opportunity to learn new words. It's been amazing. That's been one of the most enjoyable components over the last 6 months.
Great. All right, next question I have here. Let's go to Tiff. Sorry, I want to get it over to Virginia for one here. What are your experiences and/or concerns about the transition to adulthood? So I know that's a few years away, but I don't know about, personally, I've been thinking about that for a long time.
Right.
So.
Right. I mean, I think you always, you know, think about, you want your children to live up to their fullest potential. And then you also, when your kids have special needs, you wonder what it's going to look like, you know, once they get past high school, and, you know, what their adult life will look like. Certainly, you know, I think the thing that I think about is, are they going to be safe? Are they going to be happy? You know, how can we get them to the point where they're able to be self-sufficient, like Jen? I mean, that's wonderful. Of course, not everyone's able to get to that point, but I think the main things are kind of looking at schooling and education, and kind of tailoring it to them. Yes, we want them, you know, if they can, to be able to read and write, but also, you know, the importance of life skills and being safe. So I think the main worries I have are just making sure that I'm giving them all the tools that they're going to need to, you know, once they get onto adulthood. I'm in a situation where, you know, I'm okay if they, you know, if they end up staying home and are with me, that's great. But then, of course, you know, what happens to me once, you know, down the road, once I'm gone. So I think, you know, when you have children with special needs, you think about all those things, even when they're 6 and 10.
Yeah, absolutely. Have had many of those same thoughts. And, you know, I guess I'll just add that, you know, today with the experts and all the research and the speeches that we've heard today, as well as just seeing, you know, Jen and so many other people and Chris, you know, doing so well, it gives me a lot of hope. So we'll spin that into a positive outlook as well. You know, I think there's a lot of exciting things ahead.
And I do think that there is a need to create more employment opportunities for people with intellectual disabilities. You know, I just think that that is something that we've made progress on schools and having our kids, at least people are aware of inclusion and are working towards it. But I think that there is something that, this is a big need in our community, is creating more employment opportunities for our kids when they're adults.
Mhm.
Nick,
Right. Yeah. Jen, go ahead.
I don't know if you're going to ask me this or not, but I wanted to point out with my schooling experience, it was pretty okay for the most part. But then I got picked on badly, and I was just dealing with a whole lot of emotional times. I got picked on because I probably wore glasses or something. No one knew during my school years that I had mosaic Down syndrome. And so I got picked on, I got bullied emotionally and physically. In conjunction with that, I did some things that I'm not so proud of anymore, but it just makes me realize, but yes, I did drink alcohol, and I gave that up almost 5 years ago. And so I've had so many transitions happening. My father passed away when I was only 18 while in high school, and my mom passed away 5 years ago. And because my sister's all I have left, she even fought my battles. And that is something that I love so much with my sister, because she's there for me when I need it the most. And after our mother passed 5 years ago, what am I getting ready to do? Getting ready to move to Wisconsin, because I did some Down syndrome related stuff in Broward County where I grew up. But it got even more interesting and fun by the time I get up here to Wisconsin. I'm an adult. I kind of know what to do for the most part. And then sometimes I do question, like, am I doing this right or not doing this right? I always like to make sure with a lot of things. But when it comes to my schooling that I had quite the experience. As for work, I lost count on how many jobs I've had. I wish I could work now. I could, but it's my ankle that's stopping me right now. And so it's been rough. It's been hard, but I'm an overcomer and I'm determined. So I know when to push myself to the limit to get to where I need to be. And doing all these amazing things in the Down syndrome community, it's amazing. It's such a rewarding experience to have mosaic Down syndrome and to tell my life story, because I'm an open book. And it's just amazing overall. I love being who I am and representing nothing down, because I'm a wonderful, dedicated ambassador. And I'm the only one in the state of Wisconsin. So I love it. But for the rest of you with your kids with Down syndrome, things may get tough, but just know things will get better. And it's just having a child with Down syndrome. I can just imagine how fun it would be, how the struggles might have been. And that's something I play through my mind all the time, on what it would be like if I had a child with Down syndrome and I have Down syndrome. I was told 50-50 chance. Well, sadly, I don't have kids of my own, which is okay. I love kids in general, but just giving the hope and inspiration to each parent that has a child with Down syndrome to know that, like I said, it's going to be okay. Like I said, you're going to have some struggles along with it, whether it's medical, physical, or not. It could be a combination. You got this. You are your child's advocate. So advocate away with the best that you can do. I'm done. Your turn, Nick.
Thank you very, very much, Jen. That was wonderful to hear. You're clearly a very resilient person, and I think we can all appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate
it. So let's get over to maybe a little bit of a fun question here. So Amy, I want to ask you about Chris, and certainly don't share everything you don't feel like you want to share, but I want to ask about his dating.
Dating?
Can you tell us any stories, good, funny, indifferent, about his dating life?
There's no dating.
Okay. All right.
If I'm not dating, he's not dating.
That is fair.
I'm sorry. I've had my fair share of dating experiences myself, and never lasted more than 5 years. The longest was 4.5 years, and he broke my heart, but I moved on from that. But dating life for me is like, wow. It's like I want to date, but then again, I don't want to date because of COVID. And that's where my concern lies when it comes to the COVID, and your child has Down syndrome and is an adult. It's like, I worry. I'm like, okay, so this person wants to date me. But then again, I don't want to date. Yeah, crazy me. I'm on a Facebook dating site that they have. And I'm just like, why? I don't like rejection very well. So when it comes to me and dating, yeah, I'll let my flirting skills, which are pretty good, do the good thing for me, because dating right now in this COVID's time, no, it's hard. Sorry, Amy,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to take the spotlight away from you.
No, it's fine. I'm sorry. If you don't know Chris, and nobody does probably, but Chris is like, he's got the cognitive ability of like a 3-year-old. So like picturing him dating is like kind of cute to me, but it's just not something he's like really, into. But I do know that there are some folks that, do get into dating, and the whole social Facebook, I can't even imagine what I would have to deal with as a sibling when, like, with the whole Facebook Tinder thing. If anybody else on the panel has comments on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I'll,
Sorry.
no, that's fine. I don't know about the other parents in the group here, but I know that, for me, Chase is only 4 years old, but we're already assigning him girlfriends and doing wedding planning, me and mom. So
You're good, Nick. You're good.
That's cool.
all right. So Susan, let's bring this back to COVID-19, because it wouldn't be a webinar without talking about COVID-19. How has COVID affected, you and your family and your duties as caregiver?
Well, we're one of the lucky ones that we are very close by. So we've been able to sort of use the village and be able to help support with the boys. And school has been half day on 4 days a week. So that's been helpful too. I think Jacob loves school. He loves to ride the bus home. He thinks that's just best. But it's really limited, the activity at the playground, some of the things that we would have done in the afternoons, like the zoo or the Children's Museum, Gigi's. So, we've had to come up with some creative kind of things, including bringing the bounce house inside for for some play dates. But it has impacted us, but it's also brought us the opportunity to spend a lot more time with Jacob and James and Jason. So it's kind of been kind of a mixed bag, I guess. But we've loved the opportunity to spend time with them.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody's experiences are a little bit different. And if we had all day, we could probably talk about that one all day long. But the next question I have, I'm gonna kick this one over to Aaron and Tiffany. What is one thing about your own or your son's experience with communication strategies that you'd like to share? And I know you guys both use ACC, so if you want to just include any of those experiences or challenges. And just as a reminder to the audience, let us know your son's age when you're sharing.
Okay. Yeah, so my son, he's 6, and he also has an AAC device like Tiffany has described for her son. I have it right here, so I can just put it up here for people to see. And he got that when he was in the early intervention program in Illinois. And I think it was pretty evident that he had pretty difficult time with communicating. It wasn't just with speech, but like even learning signs was really hard for him. And just like that impetus to communicate was hard. I think that's one of the reasons why like I had started developing these this kind of literacy project to promote learning signs, because I felt like, okay, he's not even having a hard time doing that. And the materials that are available don't really fit into like the way that I would teach my kid or how I would learn myself using sign language. So that's where I've like started this project that I've been working on. But so that using signs or using alternative, communication has been something on our radar since he was very young. But having this device, even when he got it when he was 2, he wasn't quite prepared to use it effectively, and it's taken a long time to get him where he can use it at all, I would say. He is also, right now he's in a bilingual program at school, and what I would say, like we're working on having him kind of understand that he was used, because before this year he was in an all English program, and so understanding that there is like these 2 different languages going on for him, and so using the device and like being able to toggle between English and Spanish is one thing that we've been working on. And again, like realizing that this vocabulary, that you don't just learn one word, you're going to learn 2 words for the same meaning. And so I think all of this has been hard for him to get used to, but I do think it's helpful that we were able to get our hands on this type of alternative devices so young, so that we could get acclimated to it over time, because I think even as a parent it takes a long time to figure it out. And so now, even though I do think that having him at home for all of his schooling for the past year has brought many, many challenges, one thing that it has brought that is, I think, a benefit is that I have dedicated myself to figuring out how to use the communication device. And I use that to help him access the schooling, to be able to communicate. And a lot of the ways that he uses the AAC device is to kind of enhance, or like sometimes he just doesn't feel like speaking. And so we can kind of navigate together to what he wants to say or what he might say in response to a question. And then him hearing it there, he'll say it. And so I think that's kind of where we're at with using it right now. We're working on getting him to use it to clarify, and that's definitely the long-term goal. And one of the reasons why he's getting support through his IEP at school is they know that in the future it will be more difficult. He may have things that he wants to say that people are not understanding. And so being forward thinking about the idea that we want him to already know how to use the device, even if right now what he's trying to say he's able to articulate, and at least for me, a lot of times I can understand him. Down the road, that may not be the case, and it's going to be much better for him to have experience with the AAC device before he gets to the point where he's frustrated and can't communicate. And so that was something that one of the AAC specialists recommended. And I'm really glad that she did, because I think it can be easy to look at, well, he doesn't need it right now because he can say these 1-word things that he's trying to say. But down the road, we want to prepare him and set him up for success. And so I'm really glad that they had that view and took that view of it in the schools. And so that we're helping him to support him down the road, so he'll be able to articulate clearly.
Mhm.
And just to add on to that a little bit, our son is 10, and I really love, Erin, what you say, that you as a parent like had to devote yourself to learning how to use the device. And I think to kind of amplify that or add on to it, I think for our son, we found that interacting with someone who uses AAC and who also has other support needs, that requires a lot of skill from their communication partner. And I think none of us are born with the knowledge that we need to be good communication partners for children who use AAC. And so what I've seen a lot of times is my son has the AAC. another adult is trying to interact with him, but that adult hasn't been taught the skills that they need to know how to interact with someone who uses AAC appropriately or respectfully or in a way that lets that person use the AAC to communicate. And so sometimes my son can't use his AAC because the adult who's trying to interact with him is doing it wrong. And so I think sometimes what's missing a lot from these conversations is we're used to encountering a child who has a device and is not using the device. And the quickest conclusion people come to is the child can't use the device, or AAC doesn't work for the child, or he can't, he just can't use it. And I hear that all the time. And for me, I found it helpful to frame this in terms of thinking about the team, the people surrounding the child. Do they have the skills that they need to use the device? And a lot of times they don't. Do they have the skills that they need to make it possible and welcoming and comfortable for the child to use the device? Those are really complicated skills for us to learn as adults. And a lot of times we're not there yet. And I think it could take years for a child to learn how to use the device. And it can also take years for us as parents and support staff and community members to learn how to use the device and how to interact well with people who use the device. And so I'm thinking of it more as a community problem, and I'm very unlikely to refer to like challenges with AAC in terms of the individual who's using it. And I'm really excited because there's some community efforts in Wisconsin to make it more possible and more easier for community members to help support those of us who use AAC. So there's the Wisconsin AAC Network, which if you just Google that, you'll find a website that provides support. And some of us have also been trying to start a local chat club, AAC chat club for the Madison area. So there's a Facebook group called Madison Area AAC Chat Club. So I'm looking forward in the coming years to sort of more community supports emerging around this.
Great, yeah, and for us, Chase, he just received his AAC device, so we're trudging up that learning curve. It's a challenge for him as well as myself, probably more so. We're after 11 o'clock. I know this was supposed to be done quite a time ago, but we still have quite a few participants in the audience, which I appreciate. I want to ask one last question, and I want to go around the room here, so to speak. And let's maybe start with Amy, because you're on the corner of my screen. What is one thing about your experience with Down syndrome that you would like to share with other people? There's a lot, but if you had to just boil it down to one thing.
Keep a sense of humor.
Yeah, I love it.
Try to be positive, and be hopeful. I knew when I was a teenager that I was going to be the caregiver for my brother. I knew. And I have 6 other siblings, none of which who wanted to be involved, and still don't want to be involved to this day. So know that there are, there's challenges at all stages of life. We all go through them, and you will overcome those challenges when you're faced with them. And I know that there are parents who have small children and they're thinking about, well, what's going to happen when I die and stuff like that. You'll address those issues when you get there. Try to enjoy the time that you're in and the present moment that you're in, and try not to think too far down the road. And generally speaking, things have worked out just fine for us. It's not easy. It's not easy being a caregiver of somebody with a disability, but we rise to the challenge, and overall, we have a great life and we can't complain. And we're just, thrilled to be the caregivers for my brother. So it presents different challenges for us than other people have, but all in all, it's Madison and Wisconsin, we think is a really great community for my brother. So.
All right, thank you. Susan, what's one thing about your experience with Down syndrome you'd like to share?
I think from a grandparent's perspective, you always have that challenge of balance when you have multiple grandchildren. And with Jacob's, his with his needs, sometimes that balance gets a little skewed. But remembering that there's balance and fairness and patience. Yeah.
Erin, how about you?
Yeah, I think that for me, having a child with Down syndrome, it's just been really interesting because it's encouraged me and inspired me to use creativity to address problems that I think otherwise maybe wouldn't have to do. And so, like, for example, my son loves music and games. And so I'm constantly bringing those into my way of interacting with him and getting him to follow along with the routines or whatever we need to be doing. And to always be like thinking of games or thinking of songs just keeps me light, who like singing and thinking of funny things. I mean, that's just makes me feel like, I'll retain, my youthful spirit longer. And I like that.
All right, Tiffany? I think you're muted.
I forgot the question already.
All right, just as closing remarks here, one last thing you'd like to share about your experience with Down syndrome.
Oh, I think the big picture thing that I've learned through my experience with Down syndrome has been to love diversity, to love diversity, to really value all of the ways that we're different. And I think every person with Down syndrome is unique, and everyone in the Down syndrome community is unique, and we're unique in so many different ways. And so I think that range of the different kinds of diversity is staggering, but I think it also really makes our community so interesting and fascinating and beautiful.
Yeah, Virginia.
I think I would say the biggest thing about having two little ones with Down syndrome is that it has caused me to kind of slow down. It takes us a lot, sometimes longer to get places to go. There's more planning involved when you go and do things. But I think if you really look, there are just so many joys and small, finding joy in the small victories throughout the day. Our house may be a disaster, like a tornado went through and we may have meltdowns and rough mornings, but then when you get those hugs and kisses and you see that, smile when they see a tiny little flower outside. I mean, I think my girls have taught me to just appreciate the small things in life. I mean, and to kind of let go of some of the need to control everything because you're not going to be able to. So I think, it's taught me to be much more go with the flow and to just really to enjoy every day, and all of the, the good things that come from it. Certainly there are challenges, but so much joy has come to my life. So it's just focusing on those things are what's important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Jen, what's one last thing you'd like to share with everybody?
My favorite thing that started from Born This Way with Megan is when she started saying, "Don't limit us." Look at all the possibilities that we as individuals with Down syndrome can do. It's like, don't diss our disability, but just don't limit us, because we can do anything that anyone else can. It may take us a little bit longer or not. It all depends. But that's just like my favorite part of being a self-advocate since 2011. And then knowing about not to limit us. is like the best advice I have ever heard coming from Megan from Born This Way. And I was like, dang, she just put the nail in the head for me. I'm like, wow. So that's, I don't know if I'm the last one or not, but if it is, that's the best advice I can give, is don't limit us, because we have endless possibilities that we are still trying to overcome. With the little ones to us adults, we are amazing. And happy early World Down Syndrome Day to all of you.
Great, thank you. So that's it. I'm all out of questions. I just, again, want to thank each of you panelists for being here today. I think that was truly a lot of fun, inspiring and insightful for me. I hope everybody else out in the audience got the same out of that. So with that, I will turn this back over to Teresa for some closing remarks. Thank you.
I just want to thank each of you. You are amazing, Jen, and everybody's experiences too are very inspiring and just so informative. And thank you for being so open and so honest with your reflections and your responses. I think it helps all of us. Again, thank you to Gigi's and Mads for this partnership. We couldn't do this without you, and we look forward to continuing to find ways that we can work together and improve the lives of individuals with Down syndrome and their families. And so we appreciate journeying with you.